Okay, Namaskar, Nilesh Oak, and thank you all for joining. We are going to do this Q&A session. We will go through specific questions. Like I have total of 7 questions or 7 queries. They are not always questions, they can be comments. So we'll go through all of this. And as required, I may share some PowerPoint slides, share with you and walk through that. It says, our Panchanga have been maintained with great accuracy through numerous invasions, wars, and genocides. Okay, Panchanga as in our calendar, almanacs, the Indian Panchanga system, lunisolar calendar. So why would multiple calendars give a date of 3102 BCE as Kaliyuga start? Why would our calendar makers lose 2500 years without any catastrophic reason? And here the 2500 years he's referring to is between 3102 and my date of Mahabharata war 5561 BC. If our astronomers have been revising astronomical textbooks and tables for deviations in planet and astral positions, would they really lose 2500 years from the aftermath of such a catastrophic war that nearly destroyed the biggest and best kingdoms across a continent? Why are we neglecting the Agama of hundreds of astronomers in the past? All right, so let's split this. Our Panchangas have been maintained with great accuracy through numerous invasions, wars, and genocides. This is true. Okay, they are maintained through actual calculations. They are also maintained through repetitions of it, people preserving the samvitas behind it, and so on and so forth. The Panchanga, our Panchanga Indian lunisolar calendar that we refer to are actually not even limited to India. Even if you go to Thailand, for example, you find the Indian Panchang, at least in ancient times. So there are Panchangs that are found and which are dated to say 600 CE or 400 CE, 300 CE from Thailand have been found, and they were actually taken by the Europeans to Europe to study. Okay, and so that information exists. This is there in the peer-reviewed papers. Okay, I mean the Cassini, that the name we hear with the satellite and space shuttle and whatnot. The Cassini studied that. Bailey studied it. Many other John Playfair from Scotland studied it. Wrote impressive papers. It's there in the public literature. So why would multiple calendars give a date of 3102 BC as a Kaliyuga start? So here the question is, certain assumptions, because we hear it is also stated in the Puranas, and it is also there in some fashion in the Mahabharata, that the Kaliyuga began, Kaliyuga has something to do with the Mahabharata war or Mahabharata, time of Mahabharata. There are few definitions that Kaliyuga began when Krishna left the planet. Kaliyuga began on the last day of the Mahabharata war. You will find these all descriptions in Puranas. You also find some descriptions in some extended literature. So if we accept the traditional claim, now we have to be very careful with the word traditional. Traditional doesn't mean that there is one unanimous decision on one side saying, guys, all the tradition believes it's a 3102 BCE as the beginning of Kaliyuga. Absolutely, that's not true. And we'll see how much time we get. And then, but we take that as some existing traditional claim based on say Panchanga, whatnot, as 3102 BC as the beginning of a Kaliyuga. And then beginning of a Kaliyuga is connected with the Mahabharata or Mahabharata war or the time of Mahabharata. That is the second thing. And the third thing is the actual dating of Mahabharata. So think of this as a 3 simultaneous equations. Okay. So Kaliyuga beginning 3102 BC per one tradition within our own tradition. Another statement that says Kaliyuga began at the time of Mahabharata war. I'm deliberately keeping this soft, because of some variations there. And the third one is, when did the Mahabharata war happen? Now, they all should be together based on this. I'm saying Mahabharata war happened 5561 BC. Panchanga or some other tradition, our existing tradition is saying Kaliyuga happened in 3102 BCE. Okay. And then you have some additional questions also. At some point, you go to Aryabhatta and something like that. Is it not? Okay. Yeah, question number 3, you go to Aryabhatta. So yeah, I'll combine question number 1 with 3 also. So let me read 3. While you have managed to bring in some corroborative evidence from different disciplines for your suggested date of the Mahabharata war, how does it all add up to the sequence of historical events that occurred post Mahabharata war? I recently read a book called The Age of Buddha by Pandit Kota Venkatachalam. It makes a fascinating argument for the 3102 BCE Kaliyuga date and also goes on to provide evidence from multiple Puranas that corroborate the later history after Mahabharata war to add up very clearly till modern day. Can you please take a look at this book attached here and see whether a similar chronology and corroboration can be provided by your date for these histories recorded in Puranas? Those questions are together. Okay, these two questions are together because they go to Kali Yuga. Okay, so where do we begin? First thing to understand is that there is no unanimous tradition for beginning of Kali Yuga at 3102 BCE. That's not correct. But suppose even if it was, that by itself wouldn't have implications for what we are going to discuss. So what is that tradition? And I thought you said somewhere, unless I read somebody else, like, did you not? Yeah, you did refer to, okay, so your 7 points really. Let me read one more, Madhu, okay? The last one, 7, because I read it and I said, you said something. So point 7, he says, if there were such glaring errors in the Mahabharata war date and the start of Kali Yuga date, as used in the almanac nearly 500 letters erroneously, why would stalwart astronomers such as Aryabhatta, Varaha Mihira, Bhaskar, or even our Adi Shankara never question or investigate the matter when they dedicated entire lives to their field of study? Okay, so they all come together, okay, for this, because I remember that. Okay, so let's see if we can clean this up. The beginning of a Kali Yuga as a 3102 BCE, let's call it an estimated date. I just mentioned that we have found some old calendars, Panchanga, even from Thailand, that go back to 600 years. They were taken by Europeans to Europe. Many people studied this and they were fascinated by the sophistication of Indian astronomy. And they have written papers and books on it, by the way. Now, if you take those calendars and try to estimate the epoch of those calendars, approximately speaking, even that goes to 3000 BC. So this tradition of this 3000 BC definitely exists. And it's not just in some isolated pockets, rather it is very widespread, not only within India, but even outside India. Okay, so that credit is given. What is important to understand, so I'll just put that as my assertion, okay, or my conjecture, you can call it, that the approximately 3000 BC, let's take it, is a I wouldn't say arbitrary, but it's like some agreed upon reference point that was accepted by the calendar makers at certain point, and they did it. For example, don't we fight when India won the freedom, and people say 1947, and they say, come on, India is much older than that. And we have this all kinds of argument, right? But in a certain context, like from the British, we can say, yes, 1947 is the correct thing. Now, some people will fight 1947 versus 1950, like, when actually we started our own constitution. I mean, these things can happen. We can say, yes, we understand why somebody might say 1947 is when India won the freedom. So this is not totally arbitrary, but this is something that we agreed to. In that sense, a epoch of 3000 BC, it appears to be used as a reference epoch for calendar making. Very important to understand, for the calendar making, okay, for almanacs, for panchang and whatnot. Now, what could be the motivation to do something at 3000 BC? I'll start answering saying we don't know, or I at least don't know, but we can speculate. And when I talk about the Surya Siddhanta and all that, I'll tell you what something interesting that was happening in 3000 BCE, or at least from the text. Now let's get rid of some of the myths. For example, we, just like you stated, and this is a very common myth, that Aryabhatta in Aryabhatiya is referring to beginning of a Kaliyuga. That's why we say, oh, Aryabhatta gave 3102 BC. And the reference that is quoted is Aryabhatta says, I was 23-year-old when 3600 years of the Yuga were over. And so 3600 minus 21, I mean, all that people have done. And therefore they said Aryabhatta was in 499, and therefore the year comes to 3102 BC. Number of you are like technocrats in some fashion, even including our pharmacy experts, right? So everyone understand the term degree of freedom, right, in mathematics, right? So for example, if I have 10 pieces of information, in principle, I can do some mathematical analysis, data analysis, and draw 10 pieces of information out. But I can never draw 11 pieces of information out. I mean, that's a simple way I explain degree of freedom. In this particular reference that people very casually and carelessly quote from Aryabhatta, what they don't realize is that this reference has no legs to derive and arrive at 3102 BCE. Not many people realize that. Lokmanya Tilak, as early as 120 plus years, has written 8 editorials in his Kesari, in the newspaper that he used to publish. In the context of Mahabharata, and he has shown what the problem with this Aryabhatta interpretation. But I'm not using that as an authority, not authority. Tilak has shown, therefore true. I'll briefly explain it. In the entire Aryabhatiya, Aryabhat does not use the word Kali anywhere. Now, this may be a news to some of you. Okay. Then he talks about the Yuga, Chatur Yuga, and I'm going to mention that also. Then he divides the Chatur Yuga not in the way we are accustomed to, like 1:2, 2:3, 3:4. He divides the Chatur Yuga in 1:1:1:1. Okay, that's number one. He does not refer to Kali Yuga. He says that yugas, the fourth Yuga has beginning because we are wearing the orange color glasses. We are ready for the Kali Yuga. So, and that timing and that kind of matches. So we said, oh, of course, fourth Yuga, what he must be referring to. That has to be the Kali Yuga. Not necessarily. The Satya Yuga is also called Kruta Yuga. Kruta, that comes from, is also the Chatwar. Kruta means action, but also Kruta Yuga, Satya Yuga, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count backwards. So he's not at least explicit that it's a Kali Yuga, number one. Then he is not accepting, or at least he's not following the 1:2, 2:3, 3:4 ratio at all. Okay. And then the problem of 3600 years and 21 years is another one. See, if there are two friends, like let's take Karthik and Madhu, and I'm using just first name, so that should be perfectly fine. And if I'm coming to your place in your location, and I said the other person, Karthik, also says, come to my house also, and I'm saying, where is your house? He says, oh, just opposite of Madhu's. And I say, okay, and where is Madhu's house? He says, opposite of mine. That information is not very useful. That is the issue with 21 years, 23 years he is old, and 3600 years passed when he was 23-year-old. Because we need to know the absolute dating of Aryabhatta. And this may be another news. We can have an approximate idea for Aryabhatta. Even that is suspect, but we'll not go into detail. We'll do another session just on Aryabhatta. That 3600 is a number, 21 is a number, but unless we know the specific time of either the Kali Yuga or Aryabhatta, we cannot use this to decide either the Kali Yuga or the time of Aryabhatta. Is that clear? Just all we have is a 3623. So that's the problem. So when we think Aryabhatta, it clearly states, and people will say it, this is the basis. There is no basis. It's not that easy. It's like we cannot go fast. Just while I'm on it, let me mention Surya Siddhanta. People, you did not say it, Madhu, but people outright, they will say, oh, Surya Siddhanta clearly explains 3102 BCE. Our problem is, problem of our Indic folks in general, we don't read, we don't do tapasya. Now, Kali Yuga describes all 4 yugas, okay? sorry, Surya Siddhanta describes all 4 yugas. The timing that it is saying the beginning of something is actually, if you read Surya Siddhanta, it is saying it's the beginning of a Satya Yuga. But people have just taken that and said, okay, that refers to the beginning of a Kaliyuga. Okay, so that is also not that correct. Okay, something like this. Let's see, Varamir Bhaskar, we will skip that. But the question was, why would they follow the tradition? And I gave the answer. We have to understand, for just like India's freedom started in 1947, sometime we might say, for example, suppose we ask the question, when did the actual struggle for India's independence begin? We will get many answers. Maybe 1920, after Tilak passed away and Mahatma Gandhi took over. Maybe Lokmanya Tilak himself started. Maybe what about 1857's revolution? Okay, we can talk of any of these dates, right? That is the thing. So this date can exist. The 3102 BCE, which is inferred backwards based on our current panchang, and I'm not saying current panchang in last 200 years, even going back to 1500 years. Those panchanga also you can go back and try to estimate the epoch of those starting point, and that does go to 3000 BC. Today we will not go why 3000 BC. Once we discuss Surya Siddhanta, it will be natural to this. So that is a kind of answer. Now the question is, how do we connect, how do we take away that other issue of a Kali Yuga beginning and a Mahabharata and all this? Okay, very, very interesting. That my friend, he's also from Bangalore, by the way, Jeevan Rao, he's 23-year-old, and he is going to present with me in a conference in just next few days together. If you might have read his work in a Twitter, or he's written blogs. I will just quote his quote, which will explain what it is. He says, the assumption of a Kali Yuga, the beginning of a Kali Yuga, end of Kali Yuga, when exactly it started, anything related to the beginning of Kali Yuga, none of this information is required to determine the date of the Mahabharata war. However, the date of the Mahabharata war is very much required if we want to determine the beginning of a Kali Yuga based on the Mahabharata evidence and Puranic evidence. Okay, so that is what we are going to present, by the way, in 5 days at a conference. So now, how do we separate that? The statement that you always hear, that Krishna, when Kali Yuga began, when Krishna passed away, that statement comes multiple times in different Puranas. It never comes into Mahabharata. There is no statement that Krishna passing away and Kali Yuga beginning in Mahabharata at all, nowhere. The only statement comes in Mahabharata is that Krishna passed away approximately 36 years after the Mahabharata war. That is comes in a Mosal Parva. What these people who have created, and I'm just saying generic, these people who have created this all mess, I would say, and I assert that it is a mess of the Kali Yuga beginning, they take one statement from here, one statement from here, one statement from here, then add their own masala, and now we have a recipe. That's not how scientific research takes place. And I'm going to show you the framework, which you would have seen if you have seen my lectures, the triangle in between, and this is that. Okay. So for example, if we try to formulate a theory for all this is doing, we will not able to formulate a theory. So what I'm saying is, we have to disconnect these two events, the epoch of for a calendar purposes, and actually when did the Mahabharata war happen. Now, still I haven't answered Puranas saying Kali Yuga began when Krishna left the planet. Puranas do say that, not just one Purana, multiple Puranas. Why do they say that? That can be answered. The Mahabharata, what Jeevan Rao's work is again very phenomenal. What Jeevan Rao has shown is that taking only the Mahabharata references, of course he has taken all Purana references, but taking only the Mahabharata references, actually just before this I did a session with Jeevan Rao going over the presentation. So it's kind of fresh in my mind too. So Mahabharata has 90 plus references that allude to Yuganta, Yugakshaya. Then out of that, the 70 references referring to Yuganta, Yugakshaya occurs from say Adi Parva to Ashwamedhika Parva. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Mahabharata? I'll not go into that, 18 Parvas, okay? But these Parvas are kind of key Parvas. The last few parvas are Swarga, Rohan Parva, and not much into it. Then out of these 90 references, 15 references from Udyog Parva to Stri Parva, which is very much the timing of the war, refer to Yuganta, Yugakshaya, the Yuganta is happening, Yugakshaya is here, and stuff like that. Very interesting. I'm not going into the details, but the references from Udyog Parva before the war will say now Yuganta is almost coming, almost like a Yuganta is here. And some preferences after the Mahabharata war, but Stri Parva and Shalya Parva, they are saying this is Yuganta, or it's over, it's there, this is a Yugakshaya. So almost like Mahabharata war itself was a transition for this. And then there are, out of this same 90 references, there are 10 references that point you time and time again to the last day of the war, as if that is they're not talking Kaliyuga, but they're saying that is the Yuganta. And then Mahabharata has a statement which says the war was fought at the intersection of a Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. You would have seen those references many more times. So if you just, forget the Panchanga for a minute, forget the Purana references for a minute, which say Kali Yuga began when Krishna passed away, and just focused on the internal evidence of Mahabharata, which I did not do that. This is done by Jivan Rego in last 1 year or so. Okay. Because I looked at Kali Yuga and I said, this is not going to help me. So my hunch was correct. It was a hunch. Okay. Not like I had a knowledge. But what he has shown based on that, the Mahabharata internal tradition is saying the transition did take place around the war, and specifically the last day of the war, based on 10 plus references. Okay. So that's why these are two different events. Over time, what happens in the traditional spirit is that when somewhere the knowledge is lost, some names may get overlapped, some names may get confused. Just a simple example I'll give you is this. Madhu, I can do that thing with you and you don't have to necessarily answer, but just in your mind, you can do it. If I said give me the list of all the prime ministers of India from 1947. Okay, now without doing this, what will happen is you'll quickly say Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, you'll go through Lal Bahadur Shastri, and you'll go through Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, and of course you'll try your best. Indira Gandhi, of course, Rajiv Gandhi. I bet if you do this, and I have done these exercises in my lectures, you might have seen this, people miss like 3-4 names in between. Okay, that happens in last 70 years. Okay, so over time these things happen. So that is sort of the broad question. One more question you have there. Why are we neglecting the Agama of hundreds of astronomers in the past? First thing, now I showed that the astronomers are not as explicit as we think they are. Okay, so Surya Siddhanta is not explicit on this. Arya Bhatia is not explicit on this. And then Varahamir and Bhaskara, or even many others, do you know what they're saying? They're looking at somebody's information and they are anticipating, or they are speculating how long ago the Kali Yuga was. That is why, for example, Varahamir's number is different. Varahamir's calculation doesn't take you to 3000. It takes you to 2500 BC. There is a Vruddha Garga calculation. It takes you to the different times, because they are making their own assumptions of it. Okay. For example, people use references from Puranas. The time duration, you might have read this many times, and actually you mentioned Kota Venkatachalamji. So Kota Venkatachalamji uses this a lot. So let me try to answer that and then stop this and go to next question, because I did answer like 3 questions. The Kota Venkatachalamji, for example, uses a lot the time duration between Pariksit and Mahapadmanda. You would have remembered that time and time again. Now let me tell you the problem of this. Is this a very clean record of the duration of the time between Mahapadmanda and Pariksit? The answer is no, but people will make you believe that that is the case. For example, let's take few Puranas, and I'm just quoting from the top of my head, so don't hold me to that. But there's a Vishnu Puran, there is a Matsya Puran, then there is a Bhagavad Puran, there is a Skanda Puran. The time duration that is given between the Pariksit and Mahapadmananda varies based on the 4 Puranas that I mentioned, from 1050 years, 1050, to 3310 years. So 1050 in Vishnu Purana or Bhagavad Purana it also has 1150 and 1500. Even in the same Purana, you have got two different numbers. And if you go to Skanda Purana, it is 3310 years. So which of those we are going to take? I am saying we should take all of this into account and see which one fits, or if it does fit. The point is only one of those four are going to fit, or none of them is going to fit. Okay, and so that's a different subject. So yeah, so that's that. Okay, so we any not counter, but any follow-up questions, Madhu, based on what I said, or
So
anyone else by for that matter.
one of the follow-up questions that I had was I had also attached a paper by Dr. K.D. Abhayankar.
Yeah,
He gives one potential reason why maybe around 3100, 3200 BC might have been considered the beginning of an epoch,
yeah,
because seven planets aligned along the horizon, and that date could have been, and it was just before the Mahashivratri. So that could have been considered as the start of an epoch, and probably that's one reason why they could have considered. But I'm not an expert on astronomy,
no, no, correct,
and
correct.
I can't vouch for the veracity of it, though he's a respectable person in his field. So that's the doubt which I had.
Yeah.
Is that a potential reason why all the calendar makers actually use that
Hmm.
as one reference point to start their or restart the calendar's calculation?
Hmm. No, the answer is no. So just I'll repeat the question. So there is a paper by K.D. Abhayankar, and what he does is refers to the famous Pashupati seal, Pashupati what you call seal from Mohenjo-daro. That one is found in Mohenjo-daro. We have found some few similar ones. You may know that is dated with the timing or the layers. It was found to around 3000 BC. That kind of matches 2600 BC, which is nice, and it's a beautiful seal. And what I could have pulled the picture, but I will not go into that paper right now. But a number of you can relate to it. But you know that he's called either a Mahishasur, like with the horns on the head, sitting in the middle. He's identified with a Prajapati. He's identified with Shiva. I mean, all kinds of things. And then there are four, you can say, four animals on the four corners, right? And the animal is, I don't know that this which seal, more than likely, hopefully same seal, but like a buffalo, there is a buffalo, then there is like a tiger, then elephant, a buffalo, tiger, elephant, and do you remember who else is there? Okay, but we'll find out. Okay, so yeah, sorry, you are on the
The
mute.
wild boar.
A wild boar. Okay, good, good,
Varaha.
good. Yes, yes, yes. Like a unicorn, wild boar. Yeah, unicorn type. Very good. Or yeah, excellent. Or like a yeah, very, very good. No, that's correct. So now, is this does this have anything to do with astronomy? Actually, it's a phenomenal astronomy evidence. Okay, but if you don't, I mean, number of you are listening. If you don't have the background, this can be very confusing. In astronomy, we talk about the four cardinal points: the vernal equinox, the fall equinox, the summer solstice, and winter solstice. Okay. Now, nothing is written on that seal. It's very important to understand. Many people, so it is an interpretation of K.D. Abhayankar. Okay. And I'm agreeing with him, but that doesn't mean everyone will agree. All researchers will agree. They will say, oh, no, you're just making up your mind games. I mean, that's possible. But people who are deep into a certain subject, they can quickly pick it up. And, so the disagreement will always be there. Never go by the disagreement and saying, oh, that's controversial. Nilesh Oak is controversial or Nilesh Oak is contentious. Well, if you are original, you will be controversial because you are changing everybody's paradigm. That will happen. So K.D. Abhankar's that paper is good. I mean, I have read it, but I did not read when you sent it. But I saw what you're saying. Okay, so the question was, so your question was that seal and therefore 3000 BC? No, I mean, not necessarily. I don't know that, but I'm saying trying to connect that seal and therefore 3000 is validated, it will just not happen. But let me give you some example of how we need to be careful in in how we take a researcher's evidence. Okay, and a researcher's evidence, and that includes me. So you don't give anyone a free pass. Okay, so what I quoted from that paper, so I was reading it online right into your email. So let's see how this happens. So now most of you will say what? I mean, even including myself, I say, I don't understand Rigveda. And I'm going to look at what uh, the researcher has written in the paper, and why would he or she twist anything or lie about anything. So I'm going to accept what that person is saying. And so when people just build that narration, it's called narrative fallacy, we just may smoothly accept very nicely. One good example is the book that I discussed yesterday. What is that? Sapiens, by Harari. Sapiens by Harari. I don't know if you have read it. It just goes very smooth, very well written book. You're saying very well written book. I mean, in terms of the flow of it, and it's not very complicated to understand. People love it. I mean, it's like a bestseller or something. The problem with that book is all the all the detailed claims for dating claims for agriculture, domestication, and when and where, they are wrong. But people are going to just buy it. I mean, people are buying and thousands of people are reading. People send me that book and says, Nilesh, you should read that book. It's fascinating. It will help you. Or you should write like that person, which I agree. I mean, it's a wonderful writing style, and I'm not capable. I don't think I'm capable. But my point is, because the book is very readable, because the book is this, and who is going to go and check whether the person is going to saying the truth or not, and we have no reason to object, so we say, okay, I mean, he must be telling the truth. I mean, he's publishing it. Come on, somebody can go and call him a fake, right? Well, it's amazing what people will take the risk, because they know that it works. Why people lie? Because it works. Okay, and there's many times they have an agenda. Okay, I'm not saying Professor KD Abhyankar, I have a great respect for him, who has written a lot of stuff in astronomy, but I want to just show you how a soft statement which has no basis can be combined to make whatever you want to make. Okay, so just I'm taking one piece from what you sent me. The central figure in the seal, which is that Mohenjo-daro seal we are reading, with the lingam erectus position, is that of Prajapati Brahma. Okay. Now my point is, yes, it can be Prajapati Brahma. There is no guarantee that it's a Prajapati Brahma. It can be Shiva. Even with a lingam erectus can be Shiva. If you have been to some places, I mean, all around India, but I have seen in Nepal, you will see the picture of Shiva or Bhairava with a lingam erectus. So just we cannot say that it is a Prajapati Brahma, not necessarily. But let's consider that is so. And then he says, the Lord of the civil year, which was started at the autumnal equinox. Now, as someone, we are not experts, we will say, oh, okay, that must be the case. I didn't know that. Wow, that's a good information. My point is, in our calendrical system, the year began with autumnal equinox. Year began with winter solstice. A type of year began with the winter solstice. A type of year began with the spring equinox, like our Ugadi and Gudi Padwa and whatnot. A type of year, we have references in our ancient literature. It began with the summer solstice. We have a year that began with the first day of Vasanta Rutu, which is our current calendar, by the way. We call it Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, the Ugadi. Now it has shifted because of the precession to later point. But 2000 years ago, it was at the beginning of Vasanta Rutu. We also have calendars, including we have reference in Mahabharata, that began with the first day of Sharad Rutu. That's why, just like we call how old are you in Sanskrit or in Marathi, we say Varsha, Varsha, right? Why? That Varsha is the year beginning with summer solstice, because Varsha is a rain, the year that begins with the rainy time. But we also have heard the terms Jivet, Sharad Shatam. That Sharada is because now we have a year we are counting from Sharada, and that kind of, and we say, how many springs have you seen? Because the year begins with the spring. My point is, the identification of Prajapati Brahma is not necessarily given. It can be somebody else, but you can take it. The Lord of the civil year, which started in the autumnal equinox, cannot be assumed. It is one of the 6 possibilities, one of the 7 possibilities. Not that affects any of this. I'm just saying how that happens. Now let me take you next. Accordingly to the mythological story based on a tale described in Rigveda 10.61.5 to 9, Prajapati was enamored by his daughter, like Saraswati, that was identified with Saraswati afterwards. When she took the form of a she-deer, Prajapati went after her in the form of a he-deer. Seeing this heinous crime, Rudra killed him by shooting an arrow. I don't know how much you know astronomy, a number of you, but if you're seen in the sky, you know the Orion constellation, and then the three belt stars, then there's a Rohini. Rohini is that daughter, okay, of the Prajapati, the star Aldebaran. And the person, the Rudra throwing the arrow, is the star Sirius, and the arrow itself is the three dots and so on. So this is a astronomy metaphor. My point is that I don't know what he has done after with it because I did not read the paper. But a casual reader, because I don't have anything to object, by the way, to K.D. Abhyankar's paper here. Okay, none. My point is, there, just right in that one paragraph, he has made possibly 5-6 assumptions. But those are not necessarily understood by a casual reader. Just like we say, oh, Aryabhatiya also shows 3102 BC. Surya Siddhanta is also saying this. Varamira is also saying it. Bhaskara is also saying it. My Matha is also saying it. My Guru is also saying it. Our Panchangas are saying it. Nilesh, what's your problem? Okay. So then another thing that can happen is, just to give another example, suppose right now we go into academia, all academic universities of the world right now, and pull books on Indian history today. Just random library and Indian history. Please give me the books on Indian history. What are you going to find? Consistently from Harvard to Berkeley, and in India from university in Kashmir to university in Chennai, the books that you will find, every book will talk about Aryan invasion theory. The widespread of such a certain concept at a certain point or in book form or something is not a guarantee that that is a proven truth. That also applies to our epigraphs. I don't know, I mean, you actually did not ask the question, but the question can be asked for the epigraphs also. The argument is made, many epigraphs also lead you to that particular date. First thing, that is a lie. That is not a fact. The epigraphs are not so damn clear that they say, oh, okay, let me take 25 plus add this 3102 BC. No. Lots, even the Aihole from Karnataka, right? The Aihole inscription, I don't know if you guys are aware, it has got 10 different interpretations. Is it after 36 years after this, 36 years before? Based on that, people have figured out the timing to be 360, or is it a 360 versus 3600? It's, and then what is the Shaka era? Which Shaka? Is it 57 or 683 or 583 BCE? I mean, there are these all kinds of opening up. This is not to say, therefore, let's just confuse the hell out of everyone and not draw some conclusion. Rather, the point is, it is not as simple as we like to think. It is not. Okay. So we'll stop on this one. And not that necessarily I'll give an answer. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll go to the Arundhati Vasishta, your second comment. Other folks, if you are still here, any comments or anything that you want to add before we go to Arundhati Vasishta?
Nothing from my end, sir. It's
Okay.
all information for me. So
okay, is this okay? Thank you, Karthik. Is this an overload by any means?
Not for me so far.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go to the second question, Arundhati Vasishta phenomenon, and then we will come to Dwarka. Okay. And then there is one more on 300. How are we doing on time? So we spent about an hour or so right now. I mean, including introductions. How long you think we can go? Then I'll arrange
To
accordingly.
extend as much as possible.
Okay, the ball is in my court. I didn't realize that. Okay, so we will limit ourselves to next hour, and we definitely stop before or at the hour. Okay.
Nilesh sir,
Yeah.
with due respects, I have some work.
Please. We are recording
much.
it, so we'll post it, and then you will able to see it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Honored to meet you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go to Arundhati Vasishta phenomenon. I'll read Madhu's question. Arundhati Vasishta phenomenon seems to be a linchpin of your Mahabharat war dating theory. Just let me, what they say, nip in the bud. Let me just do that. What Madhu said is Arundhati Vasishta phenomenon seems to be, that's the right language to use, appears to be, seems to be the linchpin of your Mahabharat war dating theory. The answer is no. Okay, now that may be a news to you, Madhu, or others. Arundhati Vasishta reference is very important of a very critical, I will not use the word critical because that means it's like a linchpin. No, it's a astronomy reference of a tremendous importance to understand what is there in the Mahabharata, of tremendous importance to understand the beauty of Vyasa's mind, to understand the beauty of or antiquity of ancient Indian astronomy. It is important from that perspective. Now, is it important for the Mahabharata dating? Yes, absolutely, but it's not a linchpin. In fact, the reason I use Arundhati Vasishta is because it is just 2 lines. It is very visually easy to show what Vyasa is saying versus what is the reality today versus how it would have looked actually Arundhati going ahead of Vasishta during the Mahabharata times. Astronomically, it is solidly, the astronomy evidence solidly backs it up. Nobody can question it. It's easy to explain, relatively easy, I should say. And precisely for that reason, I use it. Otherwise, and so glad you said it, Madhu, if we just take Arundhati Vasishta reference out, not that we should, there is no reason why anyone would do that. It is not even allowed if someone wants to do it. But as a hypothetical exercise, if you take Arundhati Vasishta reference out, put it on the side, just deal with everything else is there in the Mahabharata text, it is going to take us to 5561 BCE and no other year, not 5565 BCE, not 5575 BCE. The evidence of the Mahabharata text is that powerful. Let me give you even the next one. Even more powerful than Arundhati Vasishta is the evidence of Bhishma Nirvan. Now, in what sense it is more powerful? You might have seen the slide, so I will not actually, let me see if I can show the slides. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so let me quickly walk you through that here. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. So you would have seen this presentation before, so I'm going to go fast through it, and others who may not have seen, you can look at my other presentations. Remember, before even we jump into determine something, look at the evidence, handle the evidence, we need a theory. Until we have a theory, we cannot talk of evidence, we cannot talk of objective testing, we cannot talk of drawing the inferences. And therefore, you might have noticed, like everyone I ask, like, my counterparts, like other Mahabharata researchers, I say, what is your theory? And first they just look at me like, what are you asking? Or why are you asking? You need a theory, like take the statement of Einstein there. It is the theory that describes what we can observe. Like if I tell you where you are sitting right now in your rooms, like guys, tell me everything important in the room that you are sitting, you will be puzzled. You will say, there are so many things, I don't know what is important. But if I say, just tell me in the room, all the things that you can use to determine the time, then you say, there is clock here, there is my phone here, there is a wall calendar there, because now I gave you the context. And the context is very much required for a scientific determination, scientific theory. Albert Einstein's language, it is the theory that describes what we can observe. Just as a quick point, I will say, no Mahabharata researcher, now this is a very tall claim, guys, okay? No other Mahabharata researcher has stated his or her theory to this day. Now, can we sometime indirectly infer from it? Yes. We can infer from most cases, not all cases. In fact, we can infer from maybe 10 to 20% of the Mahabharata researchers. Others are into totally like a chaotic jugaad, okay? But even the 10 to 20% of the cases, Mahabharata researchers, when we can infer, they never state it, but when we can infer, if that is what the theory we assume that they're assuming, then we can show instantaneously why they're wrong. So that's what also I do sometimes. Many, like, I don't know if you saw my debate, like when I said, this is my theory, what is yours? To Dr. Manish Pandit. And Manish Pandit immediately agreed. He said, yeah, that's my theory too. I said, really? Then your whole thing is over. We can stop the debate right here. That sort of thing. Anyways, back to this. So quickly, what is the theory? All astronomy of my theory, all astronomy observations of the Mahabharata text are actual, factual, visual observations of Mahabharata times. Now that tells me what to extract from the Mahabharata. That is scientific acumen, right? So then I looked for, read through it, I extracted 300. You would have listened to me many times, so I'm going to go fast. Then I find a way to objectively test it, logically inferencing, okay, background knowledge, which is the Agama that we are saying. There are many unheard assumptions, but one of the Agama that, of course, we are going to use here is definitely the knowledge of astronomy, both modern and Indian astronomy, plus the Mahabharata text. The point I was going to make was, so this is how it will get filled, okay? And it has to get filled. So for example, if you are exploring other Mahabharata claims, or you come across other Mahabharata researchers, show them this diagram, not these other points, ask them to fill it. You will see they will not able to fill it. That is my assertion, okay? But the point I was making, I'm going to go fast through this, is Arundhati Vasishtha, is that a linchpin? The answer is here. So what is the beauty of Arundhati Vasishtha? It gives me a range, okay? But I said just now that Bhishma Nirvana evidence is even more powerful evidence than even Arundhati Vasishtha. I'll go fast through this, but I'll tell you why. Because the Bhishma Nirvana evidence gives me even a narrower bracket, okay? From 4700 to 7000 BC. That is where I should look for the year of Mahabharata war. And if I just start combining, go on and on, I get that 1600 year reference point. Okay, so I wanted to answer that first question right there. Okay, so it's not a linchpin. Now, the next point you say, if Arundhati started walking ahead of Vasishtha in 11,000 BC, that is correct approximately, why would Sanjay and Dhritarashtra even bother commenting about it 5,500 years later? You argued that they kept the perspective of lakhs of years, blah, 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 and that this 5,500 years would be a small fleck. I have said that, but that's not how I've said it. No, that's not what I meant anyways. But in reality, at a time when detailed positions of planets, comets, moon phases, and sun are being measured and reported accurately, as per my theory, correct? Would someone make so lame a comment about a phenomenon that has been in vogue for more than 5,500 years already? It's like someone today feeling bad about the fall of Abhijit, which happened thousands of years ago. So you've definitely read my book, so that's a good one. Let's go, yeah. Let's go to this picture here. Okay. See, this is so by the way, I don't know, Madhu, if you realize this is a most frequently asked question, and not only the most frequently asked question, but anyone who does not among the research community, whether they are Mahabharata researchers or not, but anyone who does not agree with my date, they have to pick on this argument. I'm not saying you picked it for that reason, because you have heard this argument from others multiple times. That is one possible reason, or you felt it so. Either way, the argument is, I mean, I have answered this, I can tell you 2000 times, and this would be 2001. Okay, all right. So just go back to this one. So this is our framework, okay? And I said, we use this to do any scientific investigation. Now, why do we propose a theory? We propose a theory because we come across a problem that is not solved by existing frameworks, existing knowledge, existing theory. So now out of those 300, I mean, I showed there are 300 here, but just for a minute, take one reference. And what is that one reference? The Arundhati Vasishtha observation. That is that evidence there. What does it say? Now listen very carefully, because that has to do with that 5,500 years and why is Vyasa saying it and blah, blah, blah. That confusion is being created ignorantly, sometimes deliberately by other Mahabharata researchers, okay? That is their right. And actually it's a good thing, because they have created it, at least there is an interest about the dating of Mahabharata. See, otherwise, if I was the only one, and of course I wasn't the only one, there are hundreds of people before me who tried to do this. People would have said, oh, who's that Nilesh Oak? Oh, yeah, he wants to call Mahabharata happen in this. Okay, let him be happy. Who cares? Now, people do care because very famous researchers of our Indic researchers, right from Shrikant Talagiri, Konrades, Professor R.N. Iyengar, Subhash Kag, David Frawley, and you would know other names, Manish Pandit, Professor Achar, Raghavan, Jayashree, Saranathan. And this problem is not a new one. I mean, this is something has fascinated people from the time of Lokmanya Tilak. Even you go back to 17th century. Nilakanta Chaturdha, and it's always the case, I mean, you go to the times of Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Shankara, as you mentioned, they're Kalidasa, I mean, they're referring to it in some fashion. So the dating, by the way, that's another myth that people spread, that dating is not important to Indians in our tradition, just focus on spirituality, philosophy. Nonsense. If you read Mahabharata, Ramayana, and our literature, you see how much a very precise and accurate sense of timing our folks had. But back to Arundhati Vasishtha. So Vyasa is saying, now listen carefully. Vyasa is, so this people attach some very fascinating thing. It's like Vyasa is as if saying, oh my God, Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha. Oh, she started walking ahead of Vasishtha. No, that's not the tone of the Mahabharata text. In the Bhishma Parva, the second adhyaya, where this shlok comes, Vyasa is meeting Dhritarashtra. He's saying, okay, my dear king, tough times. It seems like the war is beginning tomorrow. I mean, he doesn't say that, but I'm saying, okay, say, hey, I mean, I don't see good signs. I don't see good conditions. I mean, this is a tough spot. Look, this is happening, this is happening. And he says specifically, I'm watching the sky during the day, during the night, during the sunrise, during the sunset for a long time. And I don't see good signs. The word he uses is a nimitta. And nimitta is the word that comes in multiple times in the Mahabharata, including Bhagavad Gita. Every time in the Mahabharata, these some sensational thing is happening, like the beginning of a war, Ashwatthama fighting with someone, Bhima killing Duryodhana, Karna being killed, Drona being killed, Bhishma being killed, Abhimanyu being killed, or they have been killed and now Jayadratha has been killed. Every single some sensational moments, Krishna going for a peace, you will see the nimittas are mentioned. When Karna and Krishna is coming back from Hastinapur on a failed mission, and he's talking to Karna. Again, it's a very sensational, very tense moment. And again, that Karna is describing Nimitta. Nimitta is the way how all the astronomy observations occur or described or presented in the Mahabharata text. It is absolutely ludicrous, absolutely nonsensical to only apply the nimitta, or you take nimitta equal to omen or a bad omen and only apply to Arundhati Vasishtha. It's nonsensical. All the astronomy observations of the Mahabharata text are nimitta, which means simply signs. And so the sense here, and therefore I would, Madhu, you, but also others, I will encourage you to go and read the Mahabharata text. They are talking of all kinds of things, okay, under this nimitta. And part of it is Arundhati Vasishtha. They are also saying, for example, Prajapatyam cha nakshatra graha tikshna mahadyuti shaneschara pidayati pidayan pranikodikam. Okay, so the Saturn is afflicting nakshatra Rohini. Now, that statement comes right next to this. Okay, the Vyasa is not saying, oh my God, and can you believe this? My God, this Saturn is afflicting Rohini. No, he's not saying that. He's saying, look, I'm seeing the signs. Saturn is afflicting Rohini. Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha. The sign on the moon is right now gone for up to a year. See, he's not talking even the observation of one specific day. He's talking of the observation of a period. He says up to a year. Samvatsaras thainancho graho prajulito uvo vishakhayo samipasto brahaspati shanescharo. Up to a year, I am seeing Saturn and Jupiter shining brightly in the vicinity and becoming steady in the vicinity of nakshatra Vishakha. Vishakhayo samipasto brahaspati shanescharo. So there is not that sense of suddenly something has happened. So I think that should answer your question of this why suddenly, if something was happening for 5,500 years, you're right. Okay. Why suddenly he's mentioning it? He's not mentioning suddenly. In fact, now that the war is happening, and even Bhishma, sorry, not Bhishma, Vyasa tells Dhritarashtra, this is the Kala Mahima, things will get dissolved, things will be destroyed, but don't worry, I will make a point to document the history of our great Kuru kingdom. Okay. And in that context also, he's mentioning it. Now, there is one more point that you did not specifically ask, but I should mention. Now, when he gives that nimitta, and that's why this screen I have kept it. When he gives the nimitta, he is also describing some totally crazy things, if you have noticed, like a cow giving birth to jackal and stuff like that, and then peacocks vomiting something and whatnot, and the ghost dancing in the sky and things like this. Now, just very recently, Srikant Talagiriji, just 2-3 days ago, he wrote a note, and I'll respond to that in another program sometime. We are good friends, by the way. We know each other, we communicate privately and all of that, but we also communicate publicly. But that is another thing that is used, which is, and Srikant Talagiriji used it. He says, look, in this nimitta, there is a cow giving birth to the jackal. So now he's saying, so if I am accepting Arundhati Vasishta, it is responsibility on me to show how cow gave birth to a jackal. Okay. Now, Srikant Talagiriji said in an indirect fashion or even a direct fashion, many people have said this. I'm saying it can only come from someone, at least in this emotional argument, somebody who doesn't have a scientific acumen, someone who doesn't have a logical reasoning. Now, I hope no one, and I'm going to post this, of course, no one misunderstands. I'm saying Srikant Talagiriji doesn't have scientific acumen or logical reasoning. I'm a great fan of Srikant Talagiriji's work, and Madhu, you have read his work too, especially book number 2, the Rigveda, the analysis. Absolutely fascinating book.
Yes.
The logical reasoning and brilliant scientific acumen that he shows there, he refuses to show it here. That is my objection to him. Okay. Now, what is the problem? See, my theory to explain Arundhati Vasishta is not that there are omens in the Mahabharata text and they help us determine the timing of Mahabharata war. That is not my theory. Like Srikant Talagiriji or many others, they are trying to push their theory on me, saying, hey, take this as a damn theory and now show when did the Mahabharata war happen. It is like, suppose Newton is doing his theory of gravity, and we are saying, hold on, Newton, gravity, that's fine. But tell me, like, who the hell formed these all planets? That's not relevant to what Newton is doing. Newton is saying planets are there. I'm trying to tell you how to predict their positions. What to speak of this? In fact, when Newton proposed the theory of attraction, inertial attraction, between force, attractive force between the two inertial bodies, you can read that. People ask him, okay, that's fine, Mr. Newton, but where the hell are the ropes that connect these bodies? Actually, this was really asked. And do you know what was Newton's response? You may know his famous statement. He says, hypothesis non fingo. I don't pretend to know the answer. But point is, I have a formula and that predicts the positions of this, and that is my theory. I don't have a theory for the rope, and I don't know how these planets came into being. Similarly, what is my theory? Is my theory that there are omens, there are nimitta in the Mahabharata text, and they can be used to determine the dating of Mahabharata? That's not my theory. My theory is all astronomy descriptions of the Mahabharata text are actual, factual, visual descriptions of the Mahabharata times. So therefore, when I start reading this whole Mahabharata text, if cow giving birth to the jackal, unless someone is going to tell me that this is astronomy observation, I don't look at it, because it doesn't fit my theory. And that's why this Einstein statement, it is the theory that decides what you can observe. Okay, so that is the point that is lost on many, I would say majority. Now, once you do this, a couple of things happen. Anything that is not astronomy is out of scope. In scope, out of scope. It is out of scope. And the second one is that the very first question you had asked, that 5,500 and suddenly surprise, and why would Vyasa say something that already existed? And I would love to hear from you. is that is imposed by either you or because of listening to these Mahabharata, many Mahabharata researchers who use this to see if they can take away the argument of AV observation. There is no basis whatsoever in the Mahabharata text for that. There is not that awe, suddenly, oh my God, no, there is nothing like that. He's saying Saturn is afflicting this, Saturn and Jupiter are near Vishakha, shining brightly for a year. Mars is doing this, then Mars is doing this here. Shukra is doing this. Arundhati is going ahead. The mark on the moon has gone down. The Rahu is coming closer to Sun. Like he's not saying, "Oh my God, my God!" It is not like a cricket commentary. My God, the Rahu is coming to the Sun. No, Rahu is coming to the Sun all the time. I mean, it happens twice a year, right? The nodes. So there is no sense of that awe in the sense of something specific is happening. Okay. Let me see if there is a couple more. But before I do that, let me see if you, Madhu or anyone else has any comments.
So not really comment, but more of a clarification. So what you mean to say is that in a series of observations that Vyasa has made, which he interprets as ill omens, he also lists Arundhati Vasishta. Is
Yes.
that is okay?
Correct. And so some observations, say for example, Saturn and Jupiter, that is valid for almost a couple of years. I mean, because they don't move that fast. If it's an observation of a moon, like a full moon, that is going to last for a day or two, right? So it say every observation has a certain expiry date, you can say. Now this Arundhati Vasishta observation, the way it is described in Mahabharata, actually it lasted for another 1,000 years after the Mahabharata war. Okay, so there is no sense of this. And why is it given? To timestamp. See, just like we in the calendar, we say when we do the yajna, this is the Bharata Varshe and certain time and this Vasare and this month and so on. Similarly, this is a very robust way of time stamping. This has been used in Mahabharata. This has been also used in Ramayana. Okay, so if that, then there are a couple other that I want to take. I'll take number 6 first quickly. How many of your 300 astronomical evidences are unambiguously astronomical observations of the sky and strictly non-interpretation based? That's a good question. Here is a first answer. Every observation is requires interpretation. Now, when I say interpretation, it doesn't mean it requires any gimmicks. It requires interpretation. I'll give you Arundhati Vasishta as a good example. So now, do you know, Madhu, some people do not object to this nimitta business, okay? Now, I can tell you who don't object to nimitta business, meaning, Omen, and when I give this explanation, say, okay, I understand. Or even before that, they don't even raise this bogey of a nimitta because they realize they are also using some evidence from this long list. So whatever I say, it also applies to them, so they don't raise the bogey. So who raises the bogey? Someone who does not even has a Mahabharata claim of his own or her own. So he doesn't have to explain. The person is only objecting to you, like throwing mud at you and then running away. That includes like of Konrad Elstrom, that includes like of Shrikant Talagiri. Okay, they don't have their own claim. Now Shrikant Talagiri says 1400 BCE. I don't know if you saw that. Now ask if Shrikant, I can tell you right now, there is zilch evidence, zero, absolutely zero evidence, not just astronomy, of any kind in the entire Mahabharata text that will take anyone anywhere close to 1400 BC. So with what confidence Srikant Talagiri is saying 1400 BC for Mahabharata? Only he can answer that. But I gave you the answer. There is no answer. Whatever the claim he's making, he must be talking of some different Mahabharata, nothing to do with the Mahabharata that you, me, and he knows. Okay. So that's the kind of scholarship people will run into. And I don't know if you were on a WhatsApp, but on my WhatsApp, my message, my tagline says, the problem of Indologist, and I don't mean to any specific person, and mostly I refer to the Western Indologists, but our Indian Indologists also are equally guilty. I write down my statement says the problem of Indologists is they jump into ultra crepidarianism. This is like a Tharur kind of word, which means trying to get into the area where they are clueless. For example, Srikant Talagiriji is so phenomenal with the linguistics and this whole Rigveda. I mean, that's actually what fascinated me about his research. Because while I find Mahabharata Ramayana is accessible to me, reasonably accessible with a dictionary, some translations, Rigveda is tough, okay, and something that he has done wonderfully. So just to answer your question, non-interpretation based. No, everything needs interpretation. For example, let's say Ya Chaisha Visuddha Rajas Trailokya Sadhu Sammata Arundhati Taya Pesha Vasishta Prashtata Kruta. I don't know if you're familiar. Even this statement, just the meaning of this statement, translation of this statement is fought tooth and nail by these various individuals. Now, do you know what Srikant Talagiriji says, for example? He says this is not actually just the one that he wrote 3 days ago. He says this is not astronomy observation. Now, what are you going to do to a person? Somebody says like this. He says, not astronomy observation. Some 6 years ago, and I have written a whole 8-part blog on that when he wrote to that. He says, this is all in the mind of Vyasa. This is not to be seen in the sky. Now, what are you going to do? So again, my point is, I will not object to what it is, but then his theory is different. See, we are not talking apples to apples. My theory is all astronomy descriptions of Mahabharata are actual, factual, visual observations of Mahabharata times. He's saying all the astronomy observations of Mahabharata are just something that is going on in the mind of Vyasa, is nothing to do with what was there in the sky at the time of Mahabharata war. I'm not going to object to his theory. I'm going to object to what is the predictions of that theory. There are no predictions from his theory. From my case, from this theory that you see at the top, there are predictions, which is to say, if Mahabharata says Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishta, show me for your year, whatever the hell your year is, 5561, whatever, I don't care. Show me Arundhati is walking ahead. If it says Jupiter and Saturn were near Vishakha for a year, show me Jupiter and Saturn near Vishakha for a year. If it says Saturn is afflicting Rohini, explain me what you mean by that. How it is doing that. It says Shukram Proshtapade Purve Samaroya Vishampate Uttaretu Parikramya Sahita Pratyudikshite. Shukra is doing Parikrama near Purva Bhadrapada. Show me for your year 5561 BCE. Dhruvam Prajulitam Goram Apasavya Pravartate Chitra Swatantere Cheva Dashtita Purushagra. Mars is become steady, started shining brightly, turned into Apasavya motion near Chitra Swati. Show that to me in 5561 BC. That these are the predictions that come from my theory. Those are not the predictions that come from his theory. He's saying it is in the mind of Vyasa, which means the entire 300 plus astronomy evidence of Mahabharata text is useless in his theory for determination of anything about Mahabharata, other than maybe the mind of Vyasa. Okay. So I don't mean to be critical on Srikant Talagiri, but I tried to give you the answer. And what he has done is what has been done by 100 plus other Mahabharata researchers. So the answer is pretty generic. Your first question was, how many of your 300 astronomical evidence are unambiguously astronomical observations? Well, okay, it's not a first question. But you have a joint question and strictly non-interpretation. I answered the interpretation part. What is astronomy? My definition is clear. It doesn't have to be my definition. If there is a mention of a planet, if there is a mention of a moon, sun, phases of the moon, positions of the moon, the mention of a Rahu, mention of a comet, mention of a Tithi, mention of a lunar month, mention of a season, mention of an eclipse. Am I missing anything? Season and the chronological aspect, because sometimes that allows you to decide what season it was. So let us say, for example, if I say, I came to Atlanta 21st of December. And then if I say, 6 months ago, I was in California, you will immediately say, I was there in California around the June timeframe. So the chronology will help you to determine sometime the season of the year, which has to do with the astronomy, because the position of the sun. Madhu?
Yes, sorry, that was my laptop.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Any quick comments, and then I'll get to this last question on Dwarka.
No, that's clear.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, and quickly note on the KD Abhankar's paper. I have material ready. I'm just not finding time to give that lecture. So KD Abhankar's is a beautiful work of the Pashupati seal. And if you look at uh, those four animals, and that you mentioned in your question, by the way, I may not have read it. Those refer to the four zodiac, correct? I mean, you might have realized that if you read the paper.
Yes.
It's a beautiful combination. I mean, beautiful thing. In fact, the elephant, and by the way, that goes back to even Ramayana times, but I'll not take you there today. Now, which do you know elephant is identified with which Rashi? Do you remember from his paper?
I think Scorpio, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. Okay. And so glad you can do it. Then we get that aha moment, or the Karthik and others will get that. So do you know how elephant can be seen as a Scorpio? Because when we see Scorpio, we see the Scorpio right now, because that's been told to us, right? We visualize that.
Correct.
Do you know which portion of an elephant is the Scorpio?
The trunk portion.
Yes, you got it. Yeah. And in the Ramayana, which is going back 14,000 years ago, when Hanuman is coming back from Lanka to towards India, you can say, and all the things that he see there. Do you know how this particular guy, we can say guy meaning the zodiac, is described as Airavat?
Oh,
How
okay.
beautiful. And it just writes there. I'm just giving a digression, but something so convenient. So, which is important to remember. And also, if you have noticed, that tiger is shown, right? Is it not?
Yeah.
That tiger is same as a Leo.
Yeah.
Okay. So these changes can happen. And then that boar that you mentioned is basically the Kumbha Ras.
Yeah.
Now you are, because you read the paper, you are accepting it. Many people will say, come on now, give me a break. The Kumbha I have seen, the Greek one, the guy holding a thing, and now how does that look like a boar? Well, it perfectly looks like a boar if people understand astronomy and that area of a Shatabhishaj and Dhanishta and all that. It's a perfect, I mean, I call it a jackal rather, I call it a jackal. And then there is a buffalo, which is what? Taurus. Right? Yeah. And so that time period matches with 3000 BC. Beautiful. We know how the cardinal point looks in our times. And so very soon I'm going to present it. Actually, I have the slides ready. I'm going to show the continuity of this theme going back to Mahabharata times. The evidence comes from these three different places. So you can relate to that. I'll not go into the detail. The evidence comes from the Mahabharata. About this is not a seal, but this is a visual description of these cardinal points. Okay. But the Mahabharata text itself is not enough. You have to take the reference from Mahabharata. You also need some assistance from Surya Siddhanta. And I'm going to use this Pashupati seal to show the continuity, that what is described in Mahabharata that can be understood with the help of Surya Siddhanta is what is exactly shown for the appropriate modified time of the Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro, and that tradition continues even to this day in a modified form in our Panchanga. This particular phenomenon is mentioned in the Panchanga. These four cardinal points. Just a keyword, because I'm just saying it so people say, oh, what were you talking? Not you, but others. The phenomenon is called Shadashiti. It's an astronomy phenomenon called Shadashiti. And if you go to my blog and type Shadashiti, you will already find what I have written on this. And this is written a few years ago. Okay, something very fascinating, man. I mean, you just go across, and therefore I say that there are not enough hours in the day. I mean, that is the only challenge. Okay, now the last one, and we will stop. Okay, so let me read that. Anyone else wants to add anything before I go to the last question? Karthik or Prakash or whoever. Okay. Okay. The destruction of Dwarka due to the sea entering the island. Can this have an alternate cause, such as an earthquake or tectonic movement, or simply a collapse of the sandy island due to underwater sea erosion caused by swift currents that cause the land to slide under the water, rather than the sea to rise above the land? All good possibilities, Madhu. Here is my point. The possible destruction of Dwarka, these are different theories. For example, one could be due to earthquake. Many people don't know that I have actually shown the evidence of earthquake. Okay, I don't just bring it up because people don't. I mean, the evidence of oceanography is so impressive that people should stop asking the question. So since they don't stop asking the question, I said I shouldn't even bother showing the evidence of seismology. Actually, you can show the evidence of seismology. Now, what it could be is it not. I mean, I'm not claiming necessarily that the earthquake happened and this. It might have happened. But remember, even a destruction of a certain land, it could be for any reasons, but the scars that are remaining could be seen as earthquake. Okay, so the earthquake related evidence is there actually for this, for my dating 5525 BCE. But is it because of earthquake, or is it because Dwarka was destroyed and the evidence looks like that? Okay, but there is a earthquake, independent earthquake evidence. The reason I don't bring it up, because in my mind, the oceanography evidence is so powerful, and it's not just from Dwarka, it's from around the world, that if people are not going to accept that, people will definitely will not able to understand anything else. Okay, so for example, if someone, I'm just as a metaphor, I'm saying, if somebody is going to come and argue with me that, you know, he doesn't think that Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India right now, I'll say, okay, yeah, be happy in your own world. You know, that's the kind of, I'm saying, that's why I don't go into this secondary evidence, because then they will say, but hold on, yesterday somebody came and found something else in my oceanography evidence. Many people don't know how to read oceanography evidence. Okay, so that's why I'm not discussing it. But your next one is tectonic movement. Again, you see the problem. If you know the confounding, the phenomenon of confounding, you know, like when we relate, when we do the function development, like y as a function of multiple x's, so y is a function of ABC. So we get y as a function equal to constant plus coefficient times a plus coefficient times b plus coefficient times c. And then we talk about the double effect, right? The confounding or aliasing, like some coefficient times ab plus coefficient times ac and so on. The tectonic movement, see, is some destruction because of flooding, because of earthquake can be felt like a tectonic movement in the evidence. So that is a possibility. And then last, you are saying possibly due to the collapse of the sandy island. My point is, a earthquake, tectonic movement, or the collapse of a sandy island, any of this is possible. Those are not my theories. Those are not the descriptions in the Mahabharata. Now, of course, any of this can cause the description in Mahabharata. Just listen carefully, okay? I'm not saying Mahabharata is saying this, but any of this description can lead to water, seawater gushing in. So that is a possibility. But these are not my theories. These are somebody's theories. So see, there is also Madhu, just as a discussion. If you have earthquake theory, hey, I am the happiest guy. In this format, put the theory at the top. You can say, Krishna's Dwarka was destroyed due to earthquake. Okay, that is your theory. And then what I'm going to ask you is to bring the evidence to show that. And that evidence, particular dating of it should match with the Mahabharata dating based on the Mahabharata evidence. Okay, if it matches, great. The same thing for tectonic movement. It is somebody else's theory. It's not my theory. The onus is always on the person who is proposing it, who is asserting it. It's the onus is not on the someone else. For example, just because I'm doing the dating of Mahabharata, somebody cannot come to me and says, now, oh, so you believe in Mahabharata. Now explain to me this whole phenomenon of Krishna supplying all thousands and thousands of saris to Draupadi. It is in the Mahabharata. It is related to Mahabharata. It has nothing to do with my theory. My theory is not the theory of the supplying of saris to Draupadi. It is about the astronomy observation, which leads to the dating, you know, in this case. So I'm saying that these all three theories can be there. If it is their theory, it's not my theory. The onus is on them to propose the theory, provide the evidence, objectively test the evidence, find a way and draw the inference. Once they draw the inference, suppose they find some earthquake. There is one earthquake that Michel Danino has found 2700 BCE. I mean, not he has found, he refers to it, 2300 BCE, 2700 BCE. And then I don't know if you follow Manish Pandit's recent claim for the Burkle crater in Madagascar. That is what flooded Dwarka. First thing, you have to prove that the Burkle crater was there and it was sufficient to flood Dwarka, and it did happen, and there is a evidence in whatever that particular year. Just the Burkle crater fell in the Madagascar is not evidence for Dwarka. You have to see some signs in the Dwarka too. The next question, suppose that year comes to 3000 BC. Now go to Mahabharata and show how the Mahabharata evidence to takes you to 3000 BC. I am saying time and time again, for example, there is no single piece of Mahabharata evidence. Forget 1400 BC, like I said for Srikant Talagiri's claim. There is no single piece of Mahabharata evidence which will allow anyone to decisively arrive, even as an approximate range, anywhere from 2000 BCE to 4000 BCE. That is 3000 years plus minus 1000 years. Whereas all the 3000 BCE claims are 3000 BCE plus minus 200 years, right? Okay, let's continue. And we are almost done. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so I answered that. For all we know, this narrative that Krishna predicted it or the Gandhari cursed it may have been an afterthought by the composer of the Jaya. Okay, I'll stop there. That can be. Okay, which is to say, many times this is at least my my interpretation of it. Okay, so again, that's not my theory and it doesn't bother me. In our literature, not literature, even our regular conversations, we have this word called phala hetu, if you have heard it, which is to say phala is the outcome. The outcome happens, and then we go look for why it happened. Like a disease, you know, like we are not feeling bad, I mean, not feeling well, we go to a doctor, and now doctor is diagnosing. So outcome has already happened. We are trying to find the cause of it. My stomach is not good. What did I eat yesterday? So now I'm going for a cause. Similarly, something may happen. And now we say, oh my God, Krishna Bhagwan and his Dwarka is gone. And somebody might say, well, somebody must have cursed him, you know. And so this all is possible. I'm not saying that is how it happened, but I'm with you on that it can be done. But that has nothing to do with actually happening, okay? Yeah, now the Jaya you said, so therefore I stopped there. Composer of Jaya many years after the destruction of the island and thinking in retrospect. Fine. One point on the Jaya. Just because, you know, you rubbed my pet peeves, you know, you rubbed it the wrong way. I'm just saying jokingly. That this whole, just like that Aryabhatta and how he leads to 3102 and Kaliyuga, that kind of nonsense. There is this nonsense. I'm using the word very carefully, okay? In no exaggerated fashion. If anything, they are euphemistic in the nature. That this whole nonsense of a Jaya, okay, as a first text, then it expanded, then it expanded, then it expanded, has absolute, Madhu, you're not saying it, all famous Mahabharata researchers saying it, so you are safe, is absolute nonsense. And there is no basis whatsoever in the Mahabharata text. Not only that, in fact, the very evidence of the Mahabharata text is exactly opposite of this nonsense. Of a Jaya of 8,800 verses, then it was increased to 24,000 verses, then it was increased to 100,000 verses. Absolutely BS. In fact, what Mahabharata says is this. I mean, they are claiming that 8,800 from somewhere. Where are they claiming from? They are using that number from Mahabharata, but then don't bother to read what Mahabharata is saying. This is what Mahabharata says. Mahabharata says Vyasa created, actually Vyasa, even the Mahabharata says that total there were 60 lakh shloka, 30 for the Gandharvas and 30 for the Devas, whatnot. We don't have them, okay? So to show it one way or another, but 1 lakh for the Manushas, like human beings, for us. Okay, so we have that. Then Mahabharata says, out of that, Vaishampayan removed the Upakhyan. He removed the Upakhyan, you know, this is the secondary stories on the side, and created a Samvita called Bharata Samvita of 24,000 verses. And before that, there is a statement which says this Mahabharata Grantha has 8,800 very Gudha shloka. Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutuhala. Okay, a good, curious, mysterious shloka, which Vyasa understands the meaning of it, Shuka understands it, Sanjay may or may not understand, nobody else understands. Based on this, somebody, I don't know why they wanted to do this mischief, but they have taken this 8,800, created a Jaya out of it, and then Bharata out of it, and then Mahabharata, and how it was got added. Certainly the additions took place because the Mahabharata that we have itself has 4 recensions. Vyasa told to Vaishampayan, Vaishampayan told to Janmejaya. Romarshan Sauti was listening to that when it was told by Vaishampayan to Janmejaya. Romarshan Sauti went to Naimisharanya, where they are having a conference and Shaunak Rishi is there, and he asked, hey, where did you come from and what did you hear? And now Romarshan Sauti recites the Mahabharata for the 4th or 5th time to Shaunaka and the sages of Naimisharanya, and that is documented, and that what comes to us. Okay, so the additions did take place over say 80 to 100 years, and through interpolation some things might have added, but as a significant core, and by core I mean 99.99%, it is very fascinating how it has come to us. Okay, but let's move on. Let's see what else. If yes, won't that be sufficient to support any and 3102 BC war date, since it doesn't need seawater rise anymore to explain the loss of Dwarka Island? If yes, yes. But I'm saying it is somebody's theory, and the onus is on that person to prove it, and not just show some earthquake and say therefore Dwarka flooding happened there. No, Krishna's Dwarka flooding, if that person comes up with any date, 1400 BC, 1500 BC, 1700 BC, 2000 BC, now that they have to go back to Mahabharata and show how the Mahabharata evidence takes them to that particular date. If not, they're talking of some earthquake near Dwarka or at Dwarka. They are talking of some flooding at Dwarka, but it has nothing to do with Krishna's flooding. You know, Krishna's Dwarka being flooded after the 36 years after the Mahabharata war.
So the one thing, because I've been exposed to all this in the last year.
Yeah.
The one thing that one of the people who I follow closely on Clubhouse and seem to be well informed was saying that while 3102 is generally the expected date, there is, from his viewpoint, there is a 1800 year gap that he's not able to explain, and it keeps bothering him, and it's something that he wanted to look into.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is Karthik Madhu talking, right?
Karthik here, sir.
Karthik, yeah. But actually, the reason Madhu also mentioned that, you know, so how do we explain the gap post Mahabharata? Okay. Okay. Now the people, so, and then one of his Kota Venkatachalam related question was like, Kota Venkatachalam has done a beautiful job of combining it. Let me say something about Kota Venkatachalam. You might know that he was also then, you know, afterwards he was a Shankaracharya. Many of you may know that. If not, then Kota Venkatachalam wrote multiple books. I have all of them. I know his grandson or great grandson. I mean, he's in North Carolina. I was with him at a conference. I had invited him to a conference in certain place. I have his books. Most of those books of Kota Venkatachalam were written by him in like 1950s, so about 70 years ago. And I would say just like what Lokmanya Tilak did is a fascinating for that particular time. Because you know you always, how does the scientific theory progresses? You know, it progresses with what can be tested for their time based on the science and technology that is existing, and sometimes the paradigms also, right? So for example, it is very foolish of us to sit here and blame Lokmanya Tilak for accepting Aryan invasion theory. It's like everyone around him is shouting Aryan invasion theory. Like if he says Aryan invasion, what are you talking? Then he will be considered a mad. I don't know if you know the reality. I know friends, I mean, because of my research there, I came in contact with them from Kerala. They are very, very dharmic. But when they go to school, meaning universities and colleges in Kerala, for their personal security, and for the fact that they are accepted in the group and they get the cooperation from the other classmates with their studies and labs and whatnot, even when they are dharmic, they pretend to be communist. I don't know if you knew that. Many people from Kerala has told me this. Okay,
Yes.
so something like this. So think, I mean, I'm not saying Turk was doing like that, but so you have to sort of accept the force of this whole thing, especially when that freedom is not there. I mean, he was put in a prison, think of it, right? In fact, some of the books that he could get access to is by intervention of Max Muller. I don't know if you knew that. So he wanted Bhagavad Gita to come to his thing, and some books related to Indian history, including Aryan invasion, AIT related. And Max Muller intervened with the British government, and the books were allowed in his Mandalay prison. So imagine, I mean, the enemy is the one you are asking for enemy's help, in this case, Max Muller's help to do this. Long story short, so back to Kota Venkatachalam. So what he did for his time is very fascinating, very impressive, and we should be thankful to him. In fact, now start looking at some of the modern day researchers. I will not take the names, not that I have a problem with it, but that's not the reason. That's not the focus. Many are essentially taking work of Kota Venkatachalam, possibly giving another paint coat, just changing one year here and there, and basically claiming it as their own work. I don't know if those guys or those of you who are on the call right now know who I'm referring to. You don't have to say these names. So whether it's right or wrong, 70 years after him, somebody is just taking his claim as is or slightly modifying and claiming it as his or her own. So he has done something impressive. But what you will find is, by the way, so he has done with the Sandro Cotters and pushing the timing of Mauryas from the 400, 500 BC to 1600, 1800 BC. I mean, I'm very familiar with that work. So that is fascinating. Whether what I have found is I have studied that work. I have studied many other works, and post 2000 BC, I have not found, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I have not found any objectively testable evidence the way I have found in Mahabharata, the way I have found in Ramayana, the way I have found in Rigveda. Couple of exceptions. I have found some in Vishnu Puran. I have found some in Bhagavad Puran, which I used to date the updation to Bhagavad Puran 1300 BC or Vishnu Puran 1600 BC and so on. But for Buddha, Maurya, Gupta, I have not found any objectively testable evidence. I told you about the genealogy problem, that, the ranges from 1050 to 3310. Why are these researchers taking selectively? So now coming to that question. So if we put Mahabharata in 5561 BCE, oh my God, suddenly there is a problem of this 1800 years or 2500 years. That itself, this whole idea that there is a problem has popped up because of what? Has popped up because of our artificial assumption of 3102 BC as the beginning of Kaliyuga, which is to miss the point that 3102 BCE, let's say 3000 BCE, has to do with the epoch for the calendar, has nothing to do with a historical sense of Kali Yuga, Mahabharata, anything like this. If we understand that, and there is no basis. In fact, the very basis of 3102 BCE, not many people realize that, unfortunately. See, the Indians, even say Madhvacharya refers to these many 100 years ago, Ramdas Swami of Maharashtra refers to that, and that all goes towards 3000 BC. So I'm saying it was some kind of very solid tradition in our times where we refer to Kali Yuga as a 3000 BC. However, that needs to be separated from the Mahabharata. Therefore, I gave that quote of Jivan Rao. So the problem of, oh, what do I do with that gap of 1800 years or gap of 2500 years? My point is, which gap are we talking? So from 5561 BC to 3000 BC, if you're seeing the gap goes away once you understand that the 3000 BC is a arbitrary, I'm using the word, set up as an epoch for the calendars. Now, how arbitrary it is, it's not very arbitrary. But we can only infer that indirectly. For example, what was something magical happening in 3000 BC? We find the reference in Shatapad Brahman. We find the reference, indirect reference through modern scientific investigation into Surya Siddhanta. For example, right now, if you look at the obliquity prediction model, like the Earth's axis, obliquity prediction model, you see that the model becomes flat. And I'll mention the name of a researcher. It becomes flat around 3000 BCE. So based on that, he has inferred that maybe the calendars, even the Surya Siddhanta, certain parameters, especially obliquity, was set, like we calibration, we know, right? We set the bar again back to zero kind of thing after calibration, was set in 3000 BC. That is how he has inferred. His name is Dr. Anil Narayanan, former ISRO scientist, now in Washington, DC, has published papers in peer-reviewed journals. If you go to Google Dr. Anil Narayanan, you will find those papers. Good friend of mine. We work on certain things together. He has published books and so on and so forth. Okay. Fascinating work. What else? If you go to Shatapat Brahman, Pracho Disha na Chavante, the Kritikas do not move from the true east direction. That comes to again 2952, or just for simplicity 3000 BCE. So Kritika was right at the rising exactly east. Okay, that happened. That is a very complex phenomenon. Happens for many reasons. The precession, nutation, everything comes into picture. That was happening in 3000 BC. It's a cyclic phenomenon. It also happened in 14,500 BC. But my point is, the recently it happened in 3000 BC. Kritika has a very important role in our nakshatra system, Agni, nakshatra, and so on. So that could be the reason. I'm just speculating this. I'm not saying this is how I am proving it. No, none of that. That would explain it, but there is no gap. I mean, there may be actually there is a huge gap. On the other hand, like from 5561 BCE to until our times, what happened? I'm saying that's a great area to research. In fact, that's how scientific progress takes place. When you make a revolutionary discovery, why do you set up a new theory? Because there is a problem that we cannot solve using existing theories. To solve that problem, we propose a new theory. And if we succeed in solving that problem, now we have solved that one problem. But guess what? This is a characteristic. Actually, I may have a diagram here. Let me show you. This is, and that will be the last, and we'll stop. Okay. This is a characteristic of a revolutionary theory. Only if I can find it. Okay, let's see. That when you, here, good. Okay, I got it. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay, so I'll just go fast through that, but I want to show you this cube here. And you might have seen in my lectures, but it's like this. Okay, yeah. So, so one axis is objectively testable evidence, explanatory. The other axis is the logical reasoning, like logically inferring, that is a descriptive. And the third axis is the characteristic of a revolutionary theory claim leads to growth of knowledge. So here is the point. So how did my journey begin? Like, I did not set out to determine the dating of Mahabharata war. Actually, it was very simple, right? The Arundhati says going ahead of Vasishtha, but we know that it's not, and they are so solid stars that we cannot just quickly by hand move them and make go one ahead of the other. So I was fascinated. I spent 15 years, you know, that whole story. And that one observation led to another. I became fascinated and looked at the whole Mahabharata. My point is, to solve that problem, I proposed a theory and I went through this whole business. The characteristic of a revolutionary theory, when the revolution happens, this is what happens. If you are going towards the truth, the best approximation to the truth, like a jigsaw puzzle, like when we solve it, you know, the puzzle says, oh, okay, now, you know, think of the jigsaw puzzle, like you start solving and suddenly as you make progress, all the other pieces just start falling in place. That is exactly what is happening for 5561 BC. And, you know, I think Madhu mentioned it somewhere, and he said, euphemistically, while you have managed to bring in some corroborative evidence, Madhu, actually, I'll show you the slide. Not some, you name it. Today, if evidence exists from any discipline of science, and if that can be connected with the Mahabharata in some fashion, because based on a Mahabharata descriptions or something like this, and if it goes as far back as 5561 BC and beyond, I have shown that every single piece of evidence fits the 5561 BC. Now, don't confuse that with how does a flood evidence in 1400 BCE fits for this. No, I mean, floods are happening all the time. My point is the genetic evidence. Now I'll show you one slide and you might have seen that, but let me make this point. So a revolutionary theory leads to more problems. So it solves one problem and it leads to more problems of higher dimensions, higher complexity. Actually, Madhu, somewhere you asked that, so how will we solve that and so on. So the problem that you're talking of, the gap of 1800 years, 2500 years, I will say why 1800 years, 2500 years? You can say a gap of 7500 years from 5561 to now. Or if we say we understand last 1000 years, fine, 6500 years. If we understand another 1000 years, fine, 5500 years. So it's even bigger, but so what? I mean, let's cherish it and let's go and find out what we can find. And actually, we are finding a lot. Just like what a Benker's paper fills that gap in between. It's not like suddenly the Indians disappeared. They are doing it. They are using the same astronomy that I'm going to show you, like Mahabharata astronomy, Ramayana astronomy. Isn't it fascinating that the Ramayana astronomy to Mahabharata astronomy, there is hardly any change? I mean, some small changes have occurred. And frankly, from Mahabharata astronomy to our times, not much has changed. Like what we call Purva Bhadrapada, they used to call Proshtapade Purve, Purva Proshthapada. Some slight changes. Otherwise, no changes. And the slide that I was going to show you, let me see how much evidence. And you would have seen this. So it's not like I have to show you here. Here. Okay, this is my last one and I will stop. I went 2 minutes over. So yes, I began with astronomy, that 300 plus evidence. So every single circle doesn't tell you how much evidence is behind that particular globe. That led me to 5561 BC. But see, these are some areas. This is not some evidence. If evidence exists, and in some fashion it can be connected to Mahabharata description, Mahabharata text, Mahabharata internal, Mahabharata evidence, and if it can be objectively tested, it has taken to 5561 BC. It will not always therefore stamp it 5561 BC. Frankly, other than astronomy, nothing can give you a stamp down to the year and down to the day and down to the month. No, only astronomy can do that, assuming the evidence exists. But oceanography, seismology, geology, archaeology, hydrology, climatology, agriculture, hydronomy, paleontology, the other text, the other, just like we are saying, just like Kota Venkatachalamji did, like he tried to combine. Ramayana perfectly fits with the Mahabharata. The Rigveda descriptions fit with the Mahabharata. The timing I'm talking, not just the descriptions. And you can connect that. Genealogy, genetics evidence. Just as a genealogy, last one I'll mention. See, if you take 1050 of a Vishnu Puran from Mahapadmanda to Pariksit, and let's take Kota Venkatachalam's dates of 1600 or 1800 BC, say 1600 BC for Maurya. If you add 1000 to it, that takes you to 2600 BC. It doesn't do much, right? But what if you take Skanda Purana 3310? Just for a fun to see the surprise of it, right? So now suddenly to that 2000 BC approximately, you added 3000 years. 3310 from Skanda Purana. So 300 adds up, that goes to 2000 BC plus 3000. We are talking 5000 BC. Okay, and this is the Skanda Purana evidence is not made by me. Okay, so I'm saying that certain in the evidence, just like in the objective testing, in the falsification, in the corroboration, there is a degree. We talk of degree of corroboration, degree of falsification, degree of testability. So some evidence is more of a better kind than another evidence. Arundhati Vasishtha observation is of a very high kind. Okay, because for 100 plus years, people thought it's impossible. I mean, Vyasa must be crazy. That's what people have said, by the way. I mean, Bharat Ratna Mahamahopadhyaya, Panduranga Vamankane, Bharatacharya C.V. Vaidya, they have said somebody must have inserted this observation in between. And therefore, what you asked, the first question was great. Even if I remove, is it a linchpin? No, it's not a linchpin. It's a fascinating observation which should always be discussed. But if you remove Arundhati Vasishtha, still 5561 BC. If you remove Bhishma Nirvana, still 5561 BC. It will take you longer as an investigative researcher to get to 5561 BC. It's like, how do you go there? You go by car, you go by bicycle, you go by horse, or you go by walking, but you will reach the destination. So I'll stop on that. All right. Thank you for listening to my blabber.
Thanks a lot for your time, Nilesh ji, and especially for questions randomly sent over an email. You took this time and effort to actually explain. I'm very glad for that. And I hope you will probably take a little time to go through Kalhana's Raja Tarangini in future whenever you get time. Reason is Kota Venkatachalamji actually
Great
says
point.
that is a very
Great point.
accurate
Absolutely.
record of history, and not only it's a record, but he has actually cleaned up the historical records of 12 other predecessors of him, who had actually recorded that, and then presented a cleaned up version is what they say. So if possible, anytime, please go through. I'm not well versed with
Yeah,
Sanskrit.
no, no, I'll give you a quick answer. So, I mean, not to make a long one. So, Kalana's Rajatarangini, I have read it,
Oh,
and all the points that you're saying, they could be very well valid. That he cleaned up the other things. My point is, whatever Kalana is claiming the time, it does not. I mean, nothing in Mahabharata text that we have access to takes you to Kalana's time.
okay.
The issue remains the same. I mean, Kalana's time, now, do you know? I think he goes to 2449 BCE, is it not?
He goes back to that.
Yeah. So somebody's saying 3000, right? I mean, there are 130 plus claims. I'm giving a series right now on the Puropaksha of Mahabharata researchers. The whole claims go from 400 C. Can you imagine? There is a 400 C. Like, do you know who? Professor Hopkins
Oh,
of Harvard University about 100 years ago. Okay, Mahabharata, all the way to 7,300 of SB Dikshit, and everyone is in between. I'm not saying they are not making the claim. I'm saying that at the end of the day, that has to match with the evidence of a Mahabharata that you are trying to date.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. So thank you. Anyone wants to make a parting comment? Karthik, Prakash, who else? Just
If I
two
can,
remaining there.
I can definitely consider you to take my request on board about Clubhouse. There are lots of people. You'd be able to reach out to a lot of people there and have direct interaction with people who are definitely looking forward to hearing from you and the likes of you. So what you need from us, please let us know. More than
Okay.
happy. If it's an iPhone, like
No,
we
no,
have
no,
enough people
no.
in
Okay.
DC and
No,
you.
appreciate the offer. One thing I'll say is now it's a discussion group, right? I mean, the discussion groups are there on the Clubhouse, correct? Karthik?
It's completely someone's choice. I don't know whether you're able to hear me, but it's completely
Yeah, I
someone's
can
choice.
hear you. I can hear you now. Yeah. So my point is, see, the reason I mean, I am right now on the Facebook and Twitter, but that is also not by preference, but I need some mode of communication, and that's why I'm there. Given a choice, I would prefer even not there. So of course I'll explore Clubhouse, but my point is, and my humble request to all of you, those who are listening, and this is not just for my research, but this is for the research of Rajiv Malhotra. This is for research of Sri Kantalagiri, Premendra Priyadarshi, many, Dr. Anil Narayanan that I just mentioned. You might have heard Mrs. Rupa Bhatti, who works, I mean, we research together on many issues, work of Jivan Rao. I mean, the names that I'm mentioning, I consider them as original researchers. Okay, that's not to discount other people who are also doing good work. I mean, Raju Malhotra also I don't consider as an original researcher. He's a revolutionary, okay? But it's not like necessarily he has done very specific revolutionary. I mean, I love his being different. But Srikant Talagiri, Premendra Priyadarshi, Anil Narayanan, I myself, Rupa Bhattiji, and there are few I must be missing right now. I mean, see what happens, we get too busy into this. And of course, I try my best, and most of people do that. We give lectures and whatnot. But my humble request to all of you, and hopefully when we put this out to those people who listen, is that it's important that you cannot leave it to the experts. I mean, experts or researchers or whatever you want to call us, we crazy folks. You have to take this, you have to digest it, and many times you can do a better and more impressive job than even us summarizing the points to the masses. It also has another element, which is to say, when say any one of you, suppose you understand my theory or Srikant Talagiri's theory or Premendra Priyadarshi's, Rupa Bhatti's, when you say it, people and in the right format, people actually appreciate and accept it a lot easier than me saying about my date. You can see the psychological factor there, right? I mean, oh yeah, this guy, of course he's going to believe in 5561. So there is that additional value if you guys can do that, obviously while managing your other responsibilities. Okay, so this was a great session, guys. Thank you very much. I will record it. I'll just clean it a little bit and I'll post it. Thanks to we can either thank Madhu or we can blame Madhu for making this happen.
Actually, thanks to you, Nilesh ji. You were gracious enough to grant this much time and audience. Till now, most of the time we have spent is one way, where you have been talking, I've been listening. Now it was my my glad tiding that I was able to talk to you as well.
Yeah. And so we will do, I mean, not that frequently, but once in a blue moon, we will do it. Maybe even get your more friends and a good list like what you just did. And what I said today, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to, I mean, you would be convinced about it. That's not even important. But that you take that into account and you digest it and you say what it is, right? It's a progress. Yeah,
It's a continuous learning process for me.
correct. Okay, unless anyone has anything, Prakash, you haven't said much. Kemonache?
Yeah, my kid is screaming at the back. I didn't want to disturb you guys.
Okay, no, good. So glad you could join us. And so Madhu, if you are okay, then we can stop right now.
Yes, Nilesh. Thank you. Thank you a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay,
Namaste.
I'll disconnect.